Hi, everybody. If you've ever cringed when you've heard this saying, love the sinner, hate the sin, in regards to your sexual orientation, then I want you to watch this. By the way, my name is Catherine Sloan. I have been a licensed therapist for 20 years, and I have a wife and 4 kids. Happy Pride Month, everybody. Please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment so I know that you're watching. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the movie But I'm a Cheerleader. It was released around the year 2000, and while it is a romantic comedy and it's truly hilarious, the plot is all too familiar within the conservative Christian faith. Here's a clip of Megan's intervention when her parents suspect that she is a lesbian.
Do you remember the woman on TV?
Honey, we think you're a lesbian.
I myself was once a gay. Now I'm an ex-gay, Megan. I work for a place called True Directions who help people.
She ends up being sent to a conversion camp called True Directions for 2 months, where she ends up actually unapologetically embracing her sexuality, falling in love with another woman at the camp who ends up being disowned by her parents in the end. While this show is a satirical romantic comedy, the theme of the show is all too common within evangelical fundamental Christianity. Increasingly, researchers, clinicians, and survivors are calling this religious trauma, and religious trauma can have astronomical impact on one's mental health. Religious trauma syndrome, or RTS, is a consequence of religious trauma, and while it's not in the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, meaning it's not a diagnosable disorder, it is a term that's been gaining traction. RTS manifests in most people who have suffered religious abuse or been exposed to dysfunctional beliefs due to their religious affiliation. Some examples of religious trauma are fear of hell, fear of abandonment, guilt over Jesus, fear of displeasing God, family and community pressure, thought control, and this belief that the Bible is the complete authority, and also receiving limited information from authority figures and being ashamed for questioning certain beliefs. Netflix released a documentary in 2021 called Pray Away. It's the story of 5 evangelicals in the 1970s who formed Exodus International, a group that claimed that gay people can become straight through prayer and conversion therapy.
We were the leaders of the ex-gay movement. We believed that something must have happened to make you gay.
Parents are learning about a program called Exodus, which claims to convert gays.
We were promoting an idealized version of life. Gay people could be saved.
And lo and behold, the founders of Exodus ended up renouncing the organization and its practices, but only after 37 years of abusive practices. 37 years. They treated around 900,000 people just in the U.S. Here's Michael Bussey, the co-founder, discussing this.
Now, the psychiatric community agree are outdated and completely wrong. But Exodus at its peak was the largest organization promoting reparative therapy or conversion therapy.
Michael ended up leaving the organization in 1979 after falling in love with one of the organization's male members, and they later married. And let's listen to the final president of Exodus Ministries, Alan Chambers, issue his apology in 2012 to just some of the victims.
And then there's the trauma that I've caused. There were years that I conveniently omitted my ongoing struggles with same-sex attraction. I was afraid to share them as readily and easily as I do today. They brought me tremendous shame, and I hid them hoping they would go away. It seems so odd to me today that I thought I could do something to make them stop. Today, however, I accept them as something that always has and always
To me that Exodus Ministries had over 250 local ministries in the U.S. and Canada, and over 150 ministries outside of the U.S. Now, can you imagine the millions of people who were abused by this method worldwide? Not to mention how many people ended up possibly committing suicide and suffering from depression from this religious abuse. Although Exodus Ministries was dismantled in 2012, another organization broke off from it called Restored Hope Network, and they continue their abusive practices to this day. They still have conferences every single year. People struggling with religious trauma syndrome, or RTS, are usually individuals who've left a dogmatic religion or have abandoned a belief system that led to their indoctrination. And leaving this is a major stepping stone in the beginning of their new life outside of that controlling environment, and it opens the door to freedom for them, but also symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Religious trauma can lead an individual to believe that they are inherently bad or condemned, especially if they experienced purity culture. Even after they have left the religion, for LGBT people, this can lead to strong internalized homophobia even after leaving the church. I personally have a deep understanding of what religious abuse does to a person, especially members of the LGBT community, and it's imperative that we discuss this issue and bring this issue to light. I was raised in a small town in the South where even if you don't attend church, the pervasive message in the community was that God doesn't want people to be gay. It's bad, or it's a sin, or it's gross. Now, if anyone could have prayed the gay away, it would have been me. I was invited into fundamental Christianity on my college campus by other well-meaning students who were also just looking for meaningful connections with others and needing some direction. I've always leaned towards existentialism, mysticism, wanting to connect with a higher power, and I had no idea that while I was deepening my faith and learning to have hope and serve others, I was also learning what I now understand is toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing. Now, I'm very happy to report that I am a recovering fundamentalist, but the tricky part about religious abuse is that we often don't even realize it's happening until we're out of it and can see it in hindsight, which is true even in most abusive relationships, right? Because there's a part of it that's really good and loving and inspiring. And it's that part of it that keeps us stuck in the religion or the church or the relationship or whatever it is. Even being out of the Evangelical Church for 25 years, I still find myself deconstructing my faith and having to unlearn certain words and phrases that are still stuck in my mind, like an annoying, repetitious pop song that I can't seem to unlearn. I remember once in the Vineyard Church that I was attending in Atlanta, Georgia, we were all encouraged to stand up in front of the congregation to confess our sins to each other. And since most of us were in our early 20s, these ended up being mostly sexual sins, including masturbation or premarital sex or simply lust. So we all lined up shamefully, one by one, to confess our sins, while in the background there was this beautiful lights and inspiring worship music with this amazing, huge stage. It just created this environment of, it felt intimate, but it was also shaming. Now, I was terrified to come out as gay in my early 20s, and I knew that I would be rejected by my Christian friends, and I did lose several friends. I remember thinking of suicide a lot. I had nobody to talk to about this. Nobody. Religion can easily be weaponized, and sayings can be twisted to fit the agenda of the messenger. Shame, guilt, and condemnation can be among many of the harmful messages, which can lead to lasting and deep mental health wounds and severe damage to the psyche. The impact of religious abuse on the LGBT community is profound. It leads to increased rates of mental health issues, self-harm, and suicide. Now, I have college-age clients who can't come out to their parents because they know their parents are going to disown them. And how can this possibly be called the love of God? Sometimes I'm the first person that LGBTQ kids come out to because of the fear they have being rejected by their family or their church community. Even after massive scientific evidence that no one can change their sexual orientation, LGBT youth are still rejected from their communities and families. These youth experience homelessness at a higher rate than non-LGBT youth for a range of reasons, including abuse from the family and being kicked out of their homes. I just want you to know that there's help for you. If you have experienced this type of religious indoctrination, you can slowly unlearn those messages you received. There is nothing wrong with you, I promise. If you believe in God or some other higher power, just know that God did not create you to be miserable, and your sexual orientation is not a sin. Who you are is not wrong or bad. God is love, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you identify as LGBTQ and you do want to be a part of a church community, just know that there are many affirming churches that you can visit to start to deconstruct conservative beliefs and be proud and embrace who you are. Some denominations that affirm the LGBT community are Presbyterian churches, most Episcopalian churches that I'm aware of, all of the United Church of Christ churches, and about half of Methodist churches, and even certain Baptist churches. You can go to a website called believeoutloud.com to find an allied church in your area. And if you're part of a conservative fundamentalist religion and don't feel safe to leave your church, or maybe if you just don't want to leave your church, just know that you are dearly loved and your life really does matter. If you're suicidal, please call the National Suicide Hotline. It's 988, or you can visit the Trevor Project online to immediately chat with a counselor. There is a plan for your life, and we need for you to be here. One of the first things to do is just find a safe person to talk to. Sometimes just telling somebody your struggles and getting it off your chest can be very helpful. And you are not alone. And I don't want you to ever think that. I'm going to leave some links to resources under this video for all sorts of support. There's support groups and there's books you can read if you want to understand more about this topic. If you want to be an ally for the LGBTQ community, then please stop saying, love the sinner, hate the sin. It's not helpful. It's like saying to somebody, I love you, but I hate your smile. It just isn't helpful, and it's actually hurtful. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe and leave comments. I'll see you next time, and I want you to be gentle with yourself.